Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Shayla Austin, and I've done my presentation on the juvenile court process. The philosophy and actions of the juvenile court system are guided by the goal of providing the right sanctions and the right services to the right offenders. These are two demands that the juvenile court needs to meet in order to make decisions about the risk and the flexibility to treat offenders. These two are to ensure community safety and to promote juveniles' positive development. The juvenile court serves as a place where judges focus on the characteristics of the juvenile before them rather than concentrating on the characteristics of the actions they've committed. This process begins with the juvenile being referred to the juvenile court, which leads into intake. The intake is the first step in decision making regarding the juvenile. Intake procedures follow complaints to authorities against juveniles. A complaint is a charge made against the juvenile. Another term for a charge is a juvenile petition. This is a criminal complaint that alleges illegal behavior. This complaint is made to an intake officer, which is a probation officer of the juvenile court, that an offense has been committed. Most complaints are usually filed by school officials and truant officers. Essentially, the intake process is the preliminary screening process to determine whether the court should take action, and if so, what action. Juvenile court may require that the police officers place the juvenile with an intake officer of the court, a detention officer, or release to the juvenile's parents or guardians. This process is called a detention hearing and is held during the intake process. This hearing is usually conducted by an intake officer where the decision is made to whether a juvenile will be released to his or her parents or guardians or to be detained in a juvenile facility court during proceedings. A detention center is a place that provides custodial care for juveniles. Other reasons for detention is to ensure a juvenile's appearance at court hearings and for the purpose of evaluating the juvenile. The decision to detain must be made within a short period of time, usually 48 to 72 hours. This time frame does not include weekends and holidays. Alternatives to placing juveniles in a detention facility are shelter care and home detention. Shelter care is available for juveniles whom have no home or those whom require juvenile court intervention. Home detention is basically house arrest. This requires supervision of the juvenile, which is usually by a juvenile probation officer, and restricts a juvenile to his or her home. Preliminary hearings may be held in conjunction with the detention hearing. The purpose of this hearing is to determine whether that there is probable cause. During this hearing, the juvenile will be advised of his or her rights that are established. If probable cause is established, then the juvenile may be offered divisionary options such as improvement period or probation with an adjudication. These options usually last for about a year, which entails that the juvenile must avoid legal trouble, attend school, and obey his or her parents. The charges may be dropped if the juvenile has met these conditions specified. Transfer hearings take place when a serious offense has been involved and is also take place during the intake process. It focuses on the applicability of transfer statute to the case under considerations and whether the juvenile is flexible to treatment through resources available. Most states have more than one mechanism for transferring cases to criminal court. Prosecutors may have the authority to file certain juvenile cases directly in criminal court. State statutes may order that cases meeting certain age and offense criteria be excluded from juvenile court. Also, boundaries and filed directly into criminal court. A juvenile court judge may waive jurisdiction in certain cases, authorizing the transfer to criminal court. Exceptions do exist. It is a judicial waiver, which is the procedure of relinquishing the process of particular juvenile cases to an adult criminal court. This takes place after a judiciary hearing concerning a juvenile's flexibility to treatment or their threat to society. This is the fact-finding process when the juvenile court determines whether there are sufficient evidence to sustain the allegation in a petition. The adjudicatory hearing includes the juvenile's plea, the presentation of evidence, and by both parties cross-examination of witnesses and the judge's findings. These steps serve as protections to ensure that juveniles are provided with proof beyond a reasonable doubt. During this process, there is statutory provisions, usually closed juvenile hearings to the general public. The final stage in the process of the adjudicated juveniles is the disposition. This hearing is similar to adult sentencing hearing. This is when a decision is made as to the form of treatment or penalty that should be imposed. There are two major classes of juvenile disposition, which are to confine or not to confine. Disposition options include commitment to an institution, probation, supervision, or other sanctions such as community service or restitution. Disposition hearings can also be done informally for first-time nonviolent offenders. If the informal route is taken, the juvenile must be willing to waive their right to a formal hearing and then put on a formal probation. The goal of the juvenile court systems are treatment and guidance. And in conclusion, the juvenile courts there are less concerned with guilt or innocence, but more concentrating towards the juvenile's best interest. The focus on their treatment rather than their punishment also. These are sealed records and laws prohibiting the publishing of juvenile names. It is to protect juveniles from public scrutiny with the combination of philosophies set forth by the juvenile justice system. This has created a system that considers the needs of the young offenders while attempting to protect society.